The manipulation signal hidden in everyday conversations. There is a moment in certain conversations when nothing openly hostile has been said, and yet something inside you tightens. You begin to explain yourself more than necessary. You start adjusting your tone. You feel a subtle pressure to prove that you are reasonable, kind, fair, patient, understanding. That is often the first signal. Manipulation does not always arrive with threats, insults, or obvious control. Very often it arrives wrapped in ordinary language, everyday politeness, mild disappointment, soft confusion, or concern that sounds almost caring. That is what makes it dangerous. The manipulation signal hidden in everyday conversations is not always the content of the words. It is often the emotional position those words quietly push you into. Imagine a simple exchange. You say no to a request. The other person does not argue directly. Instead, they pause and say, "Wow, I didn't expect that from you." On the surface, it looks harmless. They did not shout. They did not demand. But now the conversation is no longer about the request. It is about your identity. Are you generous or selfish? Warm or cold? Loyal or disappointing? In one sentence, they have shifted the focus from the issue to your character. That is a manipulation signal. It is the hidden attempt to make you defend who you are so that you become more likely to surrender what you originally wanted to protect. This is why manipulation in daily conversation works so well. It hides inside emotional redirection. It rarely says, "Do what I want." It says, "A good person would." It says, "I guess I just thought you cared." It says, "Forget it, it's fine," in a tone designed to ensure you do not forget it is not fine. It says, "I'm only saying this because I worry about you," while invading your boundaries. The signal is subtle but consistent. You leave the exchange feeling responsible not only for your own words, but also for the other person's feelings, mood, disappointment, insecurity, or reaction. The moment a conversation quietly assigns you emotional labor you never agreed to carry, pay attention. A healthy conversation allows difference. It allows disagreement without moral punishment. It allows one person to say yes and another to say no without forcing either side into shame. Manipulative conversation is different. It makes emotional discomfort feel like evidence that you have done something wrong. That is the signal. It blurs the line between another person feeling bad and you being bad. Once that confusion is created, control becomes much easier. This pattern appears everywhere. In families, one parent says, "After all I've done for you," not to communicate pain honestly, but to collect obedience through guilt. In a relationship, one partner says, "I just think it's interesting how you have time for everyone else," not to solve a scheduling problem, but to trigger self-doubt and compliance. At work, a manager says, "I need people I can really count on," right after asking for something unreasonable. So declining now feels like betrayal rather than a legitimate limit. In friendships, someone says, "I was joking. You're too sensitive," after crossing a line. So now you must either accept disrespect or risk being defined as difficult. Different setting, same mechanism. The person does not simply express a need. They position you so that resistance becomes emotionally expensive. That emotional expense is the real tool. Manipulators understand, sometimes consciously and sometimes instinctively, that most people want inner peace more than truth in the moment. Most people want the tension to stop. They want to restore harmony. They want to avoid appearing cruel, selfish, arrogant, dramatic, ungrateful, or unstable. So the manipulator creates a conversation where the easiest way to end the discomfort is to give up your boundary. That is why this signal hides in everyday speech. It does not need dramatic language. It only needs enough psychological pressure to make you abandon yourself for relief. There are several forms this signal commonly takes. One is loaded disappointment. The sentence may sound calm, but it carries a moral weight that pushes you to repair the speaker's emotional state. Another is strategic vagueness. Instead of saying what they want plainly, they imply, hint, sigh, withdraw, or speak indirectly until you start chasing clarity. Once you begin chasing, you are already in the weaker position. Another is emotional borrowing, where the other person makes their bad mood your task to solve. Another is false innocence, where they say something clearly provocative and then act confused when you react. Another is selective fragility, where they become hurt the exact moment you try to hold them accountable. Each pattern sends the same hidden message. Manage me, rescue me, prove yourself, surrender your position. Consider a real-life example at work. A colleague asked you to stay late again to help with their portion of a project. You say you cannot because you have your own deadlines. They respond, "I understand. I just thought we were a team." That sentence is not information. It is pressure disguised as principle. It reframes your boundary as disloyalty. The hidden signal is this: if you continue protecting your time, you may now have to live with the image of being selfish. Many people collapse at that point, not because they change their mind, but because they do not want the identity attack. The manipulation lies in forcing you to purchase your innocence by sacrificing your boundary. Now think of a relationship example. One partner says, "Go ahead, do whatever you want," but the tone clearly means the opposite. Then coldness follows, distance follows, silence follows. Nothing is discussed directly. There is no honest sentence such as, "I feel left out and I want more reassurance." Instead, there is emotional weather used as punishment. The hidden signal in that conversation is that freedom will cost you connection. You are technically allowed to choose, but if you choose independently, affection may be withheld. That is manipulation through atmosphere rather than argument. Here is another example in family life. An adult son or daughter decides not to attend a gathering because they are exhausted. The parent replies, "Don't worry, we're used to not matching." Again, this is not clean communication. It is emotional exaggeration used to make a simple boundary feel like abandonment. The conversation has been distorted. Instead of discussing one evening, it now implies lifelong neglect. The hidden signal says, if you do not comply, you will be cast as the one who hurts the family. Many people give in, not because the request is fair, but because the emotional accusation is too heavy. Social settings offer a softer version. A friend repeatedly makes cutting comments, then says, "I'm just honest." That phrase often operates as a shield. It suggests that your discomfort is not a response to disrespect, but an inability to handle truth. The hidden signal is that questioning their behavior will make you look weak, insecure, or fake. So they secure the right to be abrasive while you lose the right to object. This is one of the most common signals in everyday conversation, a statement that protects the speaker while discrediting the listener's reaction. Now look inward, because this is where manipulation becomes powerful. The signal works best when it activates something already living inside you. If you have a strong need to be seen as kind, guilt can control you. If you fear conflict, disapproval can control you. If you grew up needing to read moods to stay safe, emotional shifts can control you. If you are proud of being dependable, disappointment can control you. Manipulation succeeds not only because of the speaker's skill, but because of the listener's conditioning. The conversation touches an old wound, and suddenly you are not responding to this moment alone. You are responding to years of learned emotional survival. That is why intelligent, caring, capable people get trapped in manipulative conversations. They are not weak. They are trained. They may have spent a lifetime smoothing tension, rescuing others, avoiding rejection, or earning love through usefulness. A manipulator quickly senses this. They notice what version of you shows up under pressure. Do you over-explain? Do you apologize before you have done anything wrong? Do you rush to reassure? Do you become afraid of being misunderstood? Once that pattern is seen, the conversation becomes easy to steer. Here is the mechanism in simple terms. First, the manipulator introduces tension without taking full ownership of it. Second, they link relief from that tension to your compliance. Third, they make your resistance feel morally or emotionally costly. Fourth, they remain just vague enough to deny wrongdoing if challenged. That last part matters. The most effective manipulative language lives in plausible deniability. If you confront it, the person can say, "I was only expressing how I feel," or "You're reading too much into it," or "I didn't mean it that way." This makes you question yourself. You begin to feel that noticing the manipulation is somehow unfair. That confusion is part of the design. Here is the pattern break. Not every uncomfortable conversation is manipulation. Not every expression of hurt is control. People are allowed to feel disappointed. They are allowed to be emotional, awkward, imperfect, even clumsy with words. The difference is not whether someone has feelings. The difference is whether those feelings are used to corner you, erase your right to choose, or make your boundaries feel like crimes. Healthy people can say, "I'm disappointed," and still respect your no. Manipulative people use disappointment as leverage. Healthy people can express pain and remain responsible for it. Manipulative people place their pain into your hands and punish you until you carry it. That distinction matters because once you start seeing manipulation everywhere, you become rigid, suspicious, and emotionally blunt. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become clear. Clarity asks better questions. After a conversation, do you feel informed or pressured? Do you feel closer to the issue or trapped inside defending your character? Did the other person state their need directly, or did they create a fog in which you had to guess, repair, and surrender? Were you allowed to disagree without being emotionally downgraded? These questions expose the hidden signal faster than the words alone. In the second half of this pattern, we need to look at what these conversations do to your mind over time. Repeated manipulation does not only change individual decisions. It slowly rewires your internal relationship with yourself. You begin to anticipate reactions before they happen. You edit your words before speaking. You soften clear truths into vague phrases. You start preparing justifications for boundaries that do not actually need justification. You become highly skilled at emotional prevention. From the outside, you may appear diplomatic, understanding, mature, and calm. Inside, you are slowly losing your right to exist without managing someone else. That is one of the strongest signs that manipulation is hidden in your daily conversations. You become less spontaneous and more strategic just to remain safe. You do not simply speak. You calculate. You predict. You cushion. You delay. You tell partial truths. You search for the least offensive version of your own reality. This is not communication anymore. It is self-protection in disguise. Take a romantic example. A person wants one evening alone to rest. In a healthy dynamic, they can say that clearly. In a manipulative dynamic, they know the request will trigger a mood, a guilt line, an accusation of distance, or a passive-aggressive response. So instead of saying, "I need space tonight," they invent another reason, soften the request, or overcompensate later. Over time, the manipulation signal has trained them to fear simple honesty. That is how control becomes invisible. It does not always force you directly. It conditions you until you stop reaching for freedom on your own. In authority settings, the signal becomes even more powerful because hierarchy already exists. A supervisor may say, "I'm not forcing anyone," but this is the kind of moment where people show what they're made of. Notice the structure. No order has been given. Yet refusal now carries an identity cost. You are not merely saying no to extra work. You are risking being seen as lesser, weaker, less committed. This is how manipulation hides behind culture, values, loyalty, or ambition. It turns personal limits into symbolic failures. Friendships can hide the signal through intimacy. A friend says, "You know me better than anyone. I can't believe you'd question my intentions." That sounds close, but it is often a tactic. The issue is no longer what happened. Now the issue is whether you are being a bad friend by holding them accountable. Intimacy becomes a weapon. History becomes evidence against your present judgment. Loyalty is used to suppress clarity. In these moments, the signal says, "Because we are close, you owe me reduced accountability." Even casual social interactions can carry the pattern. Someone interrupts, dominates, makes the room revolve around them, then later says, "I just have a strong personality." That phrase often functions as a preemptive permission slip. It frames disrespect as identity and any objection as intolerance. Again, the same mechanism appears. Their behavior becomes untouchable, while your reaction becomes the problem. There is also a quieter version, reversal. You bring up a concern, and suddenly you are comforting the person who caused it. You say, "That comment upset me." And within minutes they are saying, "I guess I'm just a terrible person then," or "Nothing I do is ever enough for you." Now the original issue has vanished. You are managing their collapse. This is one of the clearest manipulation signals in conversation. Accountability is redirected into self-pity so effectively that the injured person becomes the caretaker. To detect this faster, listen less to the surface politeness and more to the hidden transaction. What emotional payment is being requested from you? Are you being asked for understanding, or are you being pushed into self-erasure? Are you invited into mutual dialogue, or maneuvered into a role where you must rescue, reassure, surrender, or prove your goodness? Manipulation is often not loud because loud control creates resistance. Hidden control is smarter. It makes you participate in your own surrender. So how do you respond without becoming cruel, reactive, or dramatic? First, slow the tempo. Manipulation often depends on immediate emotional compliance. The faster you feel required to repair, explain, or decide, the more likely a hidden pressure is operating. Slowing down breaks the spell. A simple pause is powerful. Let me think about that. I'm not agreeing to anything right now. I hear that you're upset. These responses stop you from being pulled into instant emotional labor. Second, separate feelings from authority. Another person's disappointment is real, but it is not automatically a command. Another person's sadness does not automatically make your choice wrong. Another person's frustration is not proof of your cruelty. This internal separation is essential. Without it, anyone who feels strongly around you can control you. Third, answer the issue, not the identity trap. If someone says, "I guess I just know where I stand with you," they are baiting you into proving care. Do not rush to defend your character. Return to the actual topic. The answer is still no. I care about you, and I'm not available for that. I understand you're disappointed, but my decision hasn't changed. The more you defend your goodness, the deeper you get pulled into their frame. Fourth, become comfortable with being briefly misunderstood. This is hard for good people, but if your peace depends on everyone seeing your intentions correctly in real time, manipulators will always have leverage. Sometimes maturity means allowing another person to have their feelings without treating those feelings as a verdict on your character. Fifth, watch for repetition, not isolated incidents. A single guilt line may be clumsy communication. A consistent pattern of guilt, fog, reversal, withdrawal, moral pressure, and plausible deniability is something else. Manipulation is identified less by one sentence and more by the recurring effect it has on your nervous system and choices. Sixth, use clean language, not aggressive language. Clean language. That feels unfair. I'm not comfortable with the way this is being framed. If you want something, ask directly. I'm open to discussing the issue, but not to guilt. Clean language brings hidden pressure into the light. Some people will adjust immediately once they realize what they are doing. Others will intensify. Their reaction tells you a great deal. There is also a deeper lesson here. The ultimate defense against manipulation is not having perfect words. It is having a stable relationship with your own reality. When you trust your perceptions, notice your bodily tension, honor your limits, and stop using guilt as evidence of wrongdoing, manipulation loses its easiest entry point. You begin to recognize the signal earlier. You notice when a conversation leaves the realm of honest exchange and enters emotional coercion. You stop confusing discomfort with duty. And perhaps most importantly, you stop rewarding hidden control with access. Some people only speak indirectly because indirect pressure has always worked. Some people only dramatize because drama has always produced surrender. Some people only collapse when confronted because collapse has always rescued them from accountability. The pattern survives because it pays. Once it stops paying, clarity begins. The manipulation signal hidden in everyday conversations is not always in what is said. It is in what your mind is pressured to do. It is in the sudden urge to over-explain, self-correct, rescue, or abandon a valid boundary just to restore emotional balance. It is in the moment the conversation becomes less about truth and more about managing the speaker's reaction. Learn to notice that shift, and entire relationships begin to look different. Because once you see it clearly, you understand something important. You are not responsible for making every conversation feel good for the other person. You are responsible for speaking honestly, listening carefully, and protecting your integrity. Anyone who demands more than that through guilt, fog, pity, identity attacks, or emotional punishment is not simply communicating. They are trying to train you. And the moment you stop accepting the training, the hidden signal loses its power. The end.